Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Friday Night Smackdown review. And tonight's Smackdown was from the Gila River Arena in Glendale, Arizona. And tonight was Smackdown's go-home show for Super ShowDown, which is happening this upcoming Thursday. Which this show didn't get us hyped for Super ShowDown. I mean, WWE, they don't put effort and get you hyped, on a go-home show anymore, like, they used to years back. But why would you all be hyped up for Super ShowDown? Super ShowDown is going to be a glorified house show, as usual, in Saudi Arabia, because these Saudi Arabia shows have been garbage, have been shit. So in SmackDown tonight, I thought it was just a very meh show, in my opinion. Just very meh. SmackDown continues to be the worst pro wrestling show on TV. But let's get on with the SmackDown review. So, SmackDown opened up tonight with the Usos coming out. The Usos made their way out to the ring. They end up getting on the mic. They end up talking about missing last week, because they wasn't on SmackDown last week. They went on to take shots at John Morrison and The Miz. And then they introduce the New Day, Kofi Kingston and Big E. So Kofi and Big E came out. Of course, Kofi throwing pancakes into the crowd. So Kofi and Big E get into the ring. And the two of them, the New Day and the Usos, they trade praise for each other. And Big E ends up pointing out that they have one more title reign. And it makes them better. Which, this references maybe another New Day and the Usos match for the titles, which I don't want to see anymore. I don't want to see another New Day Usos match. I mean, how many times have we seen these two teams go at it? Like 50 times already? Please, I don't want to see another Usos New Day match. I mean, they had, decent entertaining matches, but I don't want to see any more. Sorry about that, but then out came The Miz and John Morrison. So Miz and Morrison end up taking shots at the Usos and the New Day. They end up saying that the Usos and the New Day should be jealous because him and Morrison are the best. So Miz ended up referencing how Dolph Ziggler ended up crashing Otis's Valentine's Day date with Mandy Rose last week. So then that leads into him introducing Dolph Ziggler. So Dolph Ziggler made his way out along with Robert Roode. And the Usos, they didn't want to wait. And they wanted to get the party started now. They wanted to get the match underway right now. So just very meh opening. It was just an introduction to the New Day, the Usos, Miz, Morrison, Dolph Ziggler, Robert Roode for their 8-man tag. That's all it was. So we had the Usos and the New Day versus Robert Roode, Dolph Ziggler, Miz, and Morrison. 8-man tag. It was a decent match for what it was, but the outcome of it didn't mean nothing. So when the match got underway, Jey Uso ended up starting it off with Dolph Ziggler. It was back and forth between them. There was a point where Kofi got into the match. He got dumped to the floor by John Morrison. Miz ended up delivering a big boot to Kofi, and the referee was distracted by Roode, who was on the ring apron. Then we saw Miz end up throwing Kofi into the barricade. Big E ended up trying to come and save Kofi, but the referee ended up stopping Big E. So Miz ends up trying to pin Kofi. Kofi ended up kicking out of it. John Morrison ended up tagging the Miz, and both Morrison and Miz ended up double teaming on Kofi. Went for the pin. Kofi ended up kicking out. And at the end of the match, we saw Jimmy Uso end up delivering a super kick to Roode. And there you go. Jimmy went for the pin. And there you go. The Usos and the New Day win the match. Overall, decent match for what it was. Decent 8-man tag. And then we had Daniel Bryan backstage. Drew Gulak ends up stopping Daniel Bryan. And Drew Gulak hasn't been shown on or featured on Smackdown in months. And like when they brought him to Smackdown from 205 Live, they went back to how he originally was, where he was having the PowerPoint presentation and dressing in a like a suit. And last year, when he was treated well, when he was Cruiserweight Champion, that whole PowerPoint presentation gimmick that they gave him went away. And so when he was brought to SmackDown from 205 Live, I'm like, oh, now Vince ends up bringing back the PowerPoint presentation for Drew Gulak. I'm like, this guy was better without that gimmick, with the PowerPoint presentation. So Drew Gulak ends up saying that he noticed Daniel Bryan had some holes in his game, and that he's prepared a PowerPoint presentation to help Daniel Bryan. So Gulak ended up saying that he got pointers from watching Daniel Bryan's match with The Fiend and his recent match that he had with Heath Slater. And so Heath Slater then appears. He's furious because Daniel Bryan ended up beating him when he wasn't ready. He goes on to say to Daniel Bryan that Daniel Bryan also made his kids cry. And Slater was shown with his fists up. And he says to Daniel Bryan that he wants another match. So Daniel Bryan ends up asking Heath Slater if he's ready now. Heath Slater ended up saying he sure is. I'm sure, I am ready. So Daniel Bryan ends up telling Drew Gulak to help Heath Slater out. So Drew Gulak ends up telling Heath Slater that they've got a lot of work to do. And pretty much that was basically that. But looks like we're getting another rematch. Heath Slater versus Daniel Bryan. You all know what the outcome of that match is going to be. You all know. Waste of time. So then we had the video package with Otis and Mandy Rose, and showed the clips of what we saw from last week on the Valentine's Day date that Otis was going on with Mandy Rose, and how Dolph Ziggler ended up approaching Mandy Rose, and that was that. It was at that point where we all felt bad for Otis, last week. So show the clips, like when he dropped the flowers on the floor and walked out, hurt, seeing Dolph Ziggler there, with Mandy. And so after the video package was over, we saw Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville backstage. Tucker ends up walking up to them. Tucker ends up saying that Mandy Rose hurt his boy Otis. And Mandy ends up saying to Tucker, this is not the right time, for this. And Tucker was like, oh, I just want to talk. And Tucker ends up saying that Mandy agreed to go on a date with Otis. And then she invited Dolph Ziggler. So Tucker ends up talking about how rough Otis is taking this. And Mandy ends up telling Tucker that she invited Dolph when Otis didn't show up or he was running late. And Tucker ends up asking Mandy, oh, why didn't you send a text message to him saying that she was running late? And Mandy Rose looked all confused about that. And looks like that she didn't send, the text message. So Tucker went on about how sweet Otis is. And he had some words for Mandy Rose. And he ended up walking off. And Sonya ends up saying, maybe Mandy dodged a bullet. And Mandy Rose ended up saying, yes. And that, she was, kind of looking forward to go out with Otis. And Sonya ended up saying, Dolph Ziggler is more like your type, Mandy. Which, that got boos from the crowd. When Sonya ended up saying that to Mandy, you heard boos. So, it's setting up, Otis versus Dolph Ziggler. We're gonna be seeing that. But Otis and Mandy Rose, they're the one of the best things going on SmackDown, along with Bray Wyatt. And then we saw Renee Young. Renee Young was interviewing Lacey Evans. Lacey ended up talking to Renee about how she was taking the Royal Rumble loss to Bayley hard as a Marine. So Lacey Evans and Renee Young talk about how Bayley and Sasha are being bullies. And Lacey says that she's changed and made progress with her own self because she first saw how much of a bully she was when she saw Sasha and Bayley picking on her own daughter, Summer. So Lacey Evans ends up saying that, it's a new her, and that she's changed. So Renee Young ended up asking Lacey, what's next for you? So Lacey ends up saying that her eyes are on the Elimination Chamber and that her goal is to become champion at WrestleMania. And pretty much that was basically the interview. It was a short little, interview with Lacey. And so then we had Braun Strowman and Elias versus Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura in a Symphony of Destruction match. This is the second time that we've seen a Symphony of Destruction match in WWE. And this is the second time that Braun Strowman and Elias are in a Symphony of Destruction match, because the very first one was them two going at it in the Symphony of Destruction match, which happened on Monday Night Raw back in 2018. So even though they weren't going at it, they're teaming together for this match against Cesaro and Nakamura. And before the match got underway, we saw Sorry about that, but I was saying, before the match, we saw, staffers, they were placing musical instruments around ringside. We saw like a gong, and we saw a big, huge piano, guitar. So Cesaro was the first one out, and he was carrying a guitar case. Then Nakamura was the next one out. He came out with Sami Zayn. And Sami Zayn was carrying a ukulele. And then SmackDown went to commercial. Then when SmackDown came back from the commercial, and we saw Elias came out. Elias. Elias came out. He ended up saying that he doesn't even know who has his back. But he wants to know who wants to walk with him. Same old shit. Same old shit with Elias. So he goes on and says, one thing will stay the same as we go into WrestleMania. And that is WWE stands for Walk with Elias, blah, blah, blah. So fans were repeating it with him. God, man. So Elias ended up beginning his latest song. And he got fans to clap along. And he introduces his partner, who is, of course, Braun Strowman. So Braun Strowman ended up coming out, and he's carrying that stand-up bass that he used on Elias in the first Symphony of Destruction match. So, but then the bell rang, and this was a fun match to me, in my opinion. I had some fun with it. So, bell rings. Nakamura ended up starting off the match with Elias. Nakamura went for some strikes, but Elias ended up dropping Nakamura with a elbow. Elias ended up chopping at Nakamura. He ended up driving Nakamura down with a hip toss. Then we see Sami Zayn ends up throwing in a tambourine. Elias ended up grabbing it first, which it failed on Sami's part because Sami was throwing it into Nakamura. But Elias ended up grabbing it first, and he uses the tambourine in the corner. Starts beating Nakamura around with it. And Nakamura ends up turning it around, reversing it, but Elias ends up, ducking the tambourine shot, and he ends up dropping Nakamura with a jumping knee, which sended Nakamura to the floor. So then Elias ends up grabbing a drum, a kick drum. He was going to use it on Nakamura, but Cesaro ends up coming over and blocks it. So Strowman ends up coming from behind. He takes the kick drum from Cesaro's hands, and Strowman ends up smashing the drum over Cesaro's head, and the drum goes around Cesaro's body. And then Sami Zayn stupidly, out of nowhere, comes from behind and hits Strowman with the ukulele that he had. Did nothing to Strowman. So Strowman ends up chasing Sami Zayn around the ring. Nakamura leaps at Strowman out of nowhere. Takes Strowman down on the outside. Then SmackDown went to commercial. Then when SmackDown came back, we saw Cesaro. He ended up having the cowbell that we saw from last week. So Elias ended up blocking the shot, the cowbell shot from Cesaro. And we saw a table that was set up on the floor outside. So Cesaro ended up knocking Elias off the ring apron, and Elias went back first through the table. Strowman ends up coming over, running Nakamura and Cesaro send them to the barricade. And Strowman ended up launching Cesaro over the announce table. Strowman then slammed Nakamura face first into the ring steps and then into the barricade. And then we see Cesaro ends up coming over with a guitar. Strowman ends up blocking it, choke slams Cesaro on the ring apron. Then we see Strowman ends up going for the base. Sami comes from behind, hits Strowman with the keyboard, with a big keyboard. Sami ends up tipping the base over, and Cesaro and Nakamura send Strowman crashing through the base because they end up delivering a double suplex to Strowman on the base. So Cesaro went for the cover on the floor. Strowman ends up kicking out of it. And towards the end of the match, we had Elias end up going to the top, and he ends up delivering, a flying elbow through the table onto Cesaro. And then we see Strowman scoops up Nakamura. He ends up hitting a power slam from the top of the announce table, having Nakamura on the piano. Hits the power slam from the top of the announce table onto the piano. So Nakamura ends up landing hard on the piano. Strowman goes for the pin. There you go. Elias and Braun Strowman end up winning the match. Overall, it was a very fun match. I had fun with it. It wasn't, a match to take serious. But like I said, I had fun. Oh my God. And then, can there ever be a SmackDown where this guy is not featured? And you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Corbin. King Baron Corbin. King Baron Corbin. So Kayla Braxton was interviewing him for comments on Super ShowDown. Corbin ended up saying, this will be the end of Roman Reigns. The end of the facade that he is the locker room leader and the face of the company. So Corbin ends up, knocking on Roman Reigns and the Usos. And stupidly, Corbin ended up saying, the fact is that Roman has never beat him in a one-on-one match, which is why he will take him out next week in the steel cage, using the chain link on his face. I'm like, Corbin, you do realize that Roman beat you at the Royal Rumble. Did you all of a sudden forget? Well, how stupid. So Corbin ends up saying after that, he will replace Roman on the posters and the billboards. And Corbin goes on about how everyone will bow to him as the king after next week. Blah, blah, blah. Corbin, can this guy not appear on SmackDown every single week? Can they give him a day off, a week off, please? And Corbin is a clown because there was a report that came out where he ended up calling Dave Meltzer. And I know some people like Meltzer, some people hate him. You all know who Dave Meltzer is, who reports on, the wrestling news. Corbin ended up saying that Dave Meltzer is a cancer to pro wrestling. You may like Dave Meltzer, you may hate him, but, Dave Meltzer knows a lot of things about wrestling. More like Corbin is a cancer to SmackDown and WWE. Fucking clown. Sorry about that again, but I was saying, Corey Graves ended up saying, "Oh, the Fiend is hurt." Really, the Fiend's hurt after taking one spear? And Michael Cole ended up saying, "Oh, Goldberg isn't done." So the Fiend gets up. Goldberg ends up telling the Fiend to bring it. Lights go back out. Fans were booing. Lights came back on. And the Fiend disappeared. Goldberg is there laughing, nods his head. And all we just hear is Bray Wyatt's laugh echoing across the arena. And pretty much that was basically how SmackDown ended tonight. But, the Fiend is going to beat Goldberg at Super ShowDown. There's no way that WWE could make the Fiend lose a match against Goldberg at Super ShowDown. They got to have the Fiend win. But overall, SmackDown tonight, very meh show, in my opinion. But yeah, anyways, that's it for the Friday Night SmackDown review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. And definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. And until the next video, I'll see you all later.